In this video, we'll be installing an electric shift kit and testing to see just what difference it makes. The kit we'll be using will require you to splice into some of the wires to your main engine loom, which I know to some people sounds about as daunting and sketchy as trying to disarm a bomb like something out of a movie scene.
Wait, no.
No, really, I promise, it won't actually be that bad. It should really be quite quick and easy. If I can do it, anyone can do it. At least, I think I can do it. Let's find out. Welcome back into Browney's garage as we continue our Barra Performance Mod series. If you've been following along so far, you would have seen us fit this car with a cold air intake, a full exhaust system and an underdrive pulley kit. We then fitted an LSD to make sure that we were putting that power to the ground and so that we could spin the wheels in the burnout box the next time we get to go back to the track. Next up, we have a mod that isn't strictly speaking a Barra mod. But as with the LSD episode, if you've got an NA Barra like we do, then chances are you're stuck with the good old 4-speed slushbox auto just like us. And if you've ever driven one of these BTR auto cars, then you'll know that the shifts leave a lot to be desired. That's where Shift Kits Australia comes in. They offer a range of performance products and handy wiring kits, but they're particularly well known for their shift kits to suit these 4-speed auto cars. This kit wires directly into your factory auto wiring and, when turned on using the provided switch, increase the shift speed and firmness of your gearbox. They can also be turned off to give back your standard shifts, which are more suitable for when in traffic or less spirited driving. The kit is pretty well priced at just under $100 for this model. It comes with instructions to help you with the install and should only require fairly basic tools to get the job done. Now, it may be possible for you to piece together something at home that will do similar to this for cheaper, but for the amount of time involved, I think it's a fairly reasonable price. I don't know if it's really worthwhile. And while that, if it does what it claims, will drop our quarter mile times, there is also one unexpected side benefit that you may not have thought of. Believe it or not, this can actually help increase the life of your transmission, despite what you may think when you hear faster and firmer shifts. Other than the dreaded gearbox oil milkshake or low fluid levels, one of the main causes of failure in these gearboxes is excessive heat. From the factory, they're tuned to shift pretty softly for comfort and general driving conditions, but this is done by slipping the gearbox and that leads to that excessive heat, something that's even worse when you're putting more power through it or more load when you're driving the car hard. By increasing the pressure for those shifts, we'll hopefully keep this gearbox happy for a little bit longer. Now, that doesn't mean that you won't break other components further back of the gearbox, such as tail shafts, axles, or your diff, but I'm just going to ignore that. No, but really, it shouldn't be a problem at this power level, so I'm not really worried about that at all. In these BAs and other model Falcons, those shifts can be somewhat tuned in by a good tuner, but I quite like having them on a switch so I have those firmer shifts when I like, and doing it this way keeps it as something simple and DIY that most people can do themselves at home quickly and easily. There are of course other mechanical options to make these gearboxes shift better and last a bit longer as well. It's worth noting as well, Shift Kits Australia do make a kit that will allow you to fully manualize these 4-speed autos, which I'm sure will interest some of you guys out there, and it's particularly popular with the burnout guys that use these cars by the looks of it. So that's the kit, complete and ready to install. But that was a little bit too simple for me. I like to make my own life a little bit harder. If you're looking for details on how to install the kit as it comes, then you may want to skip this next little bit. It's completely unnecessary. The kit, as it comes, has this perfectly adequate little toggle switch. We know it works, and there seems to be plenty of wiring for you to mount this and tuck it away wherever you like so you can keep it nice and tidy. But I've decided against that. Instead, I'm going to try and reuse a factory button to try and keep things as stealth as I can and just keep everything nice and tidy. Conveniently for me, this car never had traction control, but because there were models that did, there's a blank button right above the fog light one for where this one would go. And because there's loads of these cars about, that button is fairly easy and cheap to source, as well as cutting out the loom and the wiring for that from a wreck. That's where the convenience ends though. See, the button we want to use is only a momentary switch, meaning it's only on for as long as you push it for. The toggle switch we're replacing is of course on until you then go ahead and switch it back off. Luckily, the fog light button does exactly what we want. You push it in and it turns on, push it again and it turns off. But then we'd be left with two fog light buttons. However, by unclipping the cover on this, we can swap it for the cover with the traction control symbol. So, to get a traction control button that we can use, I've had to buy a set of both the factory buttons. Lucky they're cheap. It doesn't end there though. The toggle switch has another function that we don't yet have. It doesn't just turn on and off by connecting two wires. Instead, it has one central pin and wire with two outer wires. The position of the toggle switch determines which of these outside pins are connected to the inside pin. This couldn't be achieved with only our new traction control button, so we'll be needing the assistance of a single pole double throw or changeover relay. Now, we've discussed relays a little bit in past videos, but put simply, these are electronically controlled switches. Most common relays are used to connect large power sources using a smaller power signal, such as when turning on fuel pumps or electronic fans, stuff like that. This relay is turned on the same as most common relays, but functions a little differently. As the name changeover implies, this relay will supply power to either of two pins, depending on the state of this relay, whether it's turned on or turned off. Perfect for our use here. If I've not explained all of that too well, then it will seem a little complicated, but it's really not too bad at all. I'll flash up a poor MS Paint style diagram of my wiring up on the screen now, and I'll have some further details down in the description below if you're interested in that sort of thing. This could be used for many different types of buttons and switches that you may like to try, and you could even maybe retrofit and mount an old school power economy button from an earlier Falcon somewhere in the cabin here if you'd like to do something like that. Now that that's covered, I'm going to quickly wire all of that end at the bench while we can still do it out of the car. Then I'll finally start looking at how we actually install this kit and how I expect most of you at home will do it. Most of you who like having a life and spare time and don't need all of this extra switch talk in their life. Switch. That's out the way and we can move on to actually installing the kit. Those that have skipped ahead to see how to install the kit as it comes will want to start watching from now on. One quick note before we start. The process we use will be much the same, I believe, between BA and BF Falcons, but there was a little bit of a change up in the wiring to the ECU between those models. Not a big deal, but it does mean that the one main wire we'll be splicing into, in the wiring harness to the ECU, will be different between BA and BF. So just take note of that. It'll be in your instructions which one to cut into. Other than that, let's get started working on this and go do some testing, see how this thing goes. I'm going to start by taking the precaution of disconnecting the battery. Negative terminal off first and the last back on. Then first up, we need to make a hole in this grommet to pass the wiring through. Ideally, you'll be able to push this rubber out and drill an 8mm hole in it at the bench, but we have some rubbish aftermarket alarm already going through there, so we're going to squeeze it through alongside this. Pass the wiring through and route it around the back of the engine to the ECU side of the engine bay. Make sure you run it how you like now, as it may not be possible to change once connected. We now need to remove the wiring connector from the underside of the ECU. On the BA, the connector we need is the one nearest the firewall. The connectors for these have a lever which you can squeeze the center of, then swing down to unlock and pull the connector away from the ECU. Remove it out the side slot. It's tight and took a few goes to work out, but it does fit, just. Remove some tape and pull back a section of the conduit. We're going to cut the first wire approximately 60mm from this connector. The wire we want on the BA is connected to pin number 39. The connector has pin 36 numbered, so we can then count in from there to get to pin 39. We then pull this wire away and cut it before stripping both ends. Time for some soldering. We need to connect the white wire from the kit to the shorter connector end of the wire that we just cut. The black wire from the kit then goes to the other harness end of this wire. Make sure to use insulation or heat shrink and not to judge my poor soldering skills. It's been quite a while. These can then be tucked away and the connector put back into the ECU, swinging the retainer lever back up to lock it in. The last wire we need should be the same between BA and BF and is located in this connector. Squeeze the center and swing the lever away from the connector as we did on the ECU connector to remove it. We then need to remove the hood from this connector by unclipping it at these 4 points. The wire we need here is the smaller red wire. Rather than cut and connect it, ideally you'll use some wire strippers to gently separate a small amount and a sharp blade to carefully remove the insulation. Then, after cutting to length, solder in the red wire from the kit, insulate or electrical tape the solder joint, route it out the way and reassemble. Time to tidy up your wiring in the bay and cable tie it all up out the way to existing wires or lines. We can then move into the cabin of the car. If using the provided toggle switch, then work out where you'd like this mounted, then drill your hole and mount it up. As discussed, I'll instead be using this factory traction control button with the help of a relay, which I'll double-sided tape out the way once I'm happy and I know it's all working. Finally, the module can then be taped or cable tied out the way with the suggested location being this support bracket. Bundle and tape any excess wiring out the way as well while you're here. And there it is, a nice stealthy install, and we're ready to go out and do some testing. So we're back from some testing. I've tried to keep it as consistent as I could by using similar sections of road, and we've left the transmission in performance auto mode to shift itself. That should give the best stock shifts and therefore the best comparison that we can. I've also only done first to second shifts under full load because they all should be much the same, and I like having my license. So let's kick it off. Let's have a look at one of our tests with the shift kit turned off first. And now a run with it turned on. So hopefully you can see that shift is a bit quicker, but that will be more obvious once we slow it down. Let's have a look at that and we'll have a chat about what I think's happening here. Top with the kit on and bottom with the kit turned off. Here you can see on the top there with the kit turned on that the revs stop climbing sooner. It will climb just a slight bit after this, which looks to be a small amount of slip as it selects another gear. This still isn't a dual clutch auto or anything fancy after all. You can also then see down the bottom with the shift kit turned off, the revs climb quite a bit higher with what appears to be all slip, while the other shift is well on its way already. Something you may not hear in the video is that the tyres are actually chirping on shifts with the kit turned on, but even with this, it still ends up just ahead. Once we get rid of those rubbish tyres, or we're back at the drag strip, not a frosty morning road, then we should see that push ahead a little bit more and maybe even drop a tenth or so off our quarter mile times. We'll see about that coming up. So for under $100, the kit's definitely working. We're chirping those back tyres on shifts, which as I said, we never did before, and it's shifting a little bit quicker. I'm happy with the kit and I'd feel pretty safe recommending it to you if that's something you're interested in. Now, as we did touch on earlier, a good tuner with a tune could get those shift times a little bit quicker than what they would be stock, but I don't know if they'd make it quite as firm as what it is on that switch. Even under 100% load, they are really quite firm, so I'm glad I can turn those on and off. Speaking of tunes, I honestly hadn't planned to get this car tuned in this series for a few reasons which I can discuss in the future, but with us in lockdown at the moment, we're not going to be back at the track for a while, could be quite some time yet, so I would like to have some form of results, and maybe a tune would be a perfect place to do that. Let's be honest, I'd really like to see what an NA car can pick up in a tune as well. So if that's something you're keen to check out, let me know down in the comments, because I'm still tossing that up. But as I said, it'd be good to have those results, and then we can go to the track later when it opens up again. Anyway, I hope that's helped some of you, or at very least kept you entertained for a little bit. We've still got a trick or two coming for this car, so if you'd like to see that and our results in the future, make sure you're subscribed to the channel for those videos as they come. And if you've enjoyed this one, give us a like and maybe share it with a mate. I'm really getting a kick out of seeing that and some of the feedback in the comments. As always guys, thanks for watching, stay safe, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.